Paley. He's from the UK. Martin, are you there?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you see me as well?
What's that?
Can you see me okay?
Yes.
My camera's pretty rubbish.
Your camera's a little blurry, but yeah, we can see you. All good? Yeah, so he's going to talk to us about his experience and his journey in activism, okay? So all yours, Martin, if you want to share something, let me know.
Cool.
All
right. I don't normally use Google Meet, but I assume I can, as shown, share something. Can you see the screen?
Wait, give me 1 second. 1 sec. Okay. Yes, we can see you. Can you guys hear him? Yeah?
You can now see a presentation like a bit about me, right?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So I'm kind of going to like use this as a bit of a visual and talk through, yeah, I guess like my journey. So I wouldn't say I'd kind of be any sort of activist until this like later part of like the last kind of 2 pictures. And how I got there, I'm not really sure. Or like where, there was that question of kind of with Extinction Rebellion for Alex, as an activist, like how does it change your life? But like, are we all activists in some way? Is it about taking kind of a direct action? I think that's kind of quite an interesting question, and like whether we have to be activists to change things, or whether we can kind of just be like almost good citizens. But anyway, yeah, I'd say for me, kind of like early life, teenage years, and early adult life, like I've always loved the outdoors. So I've always enjoyed kind of hiking and climbing, like anything outdoors, I really enjoy. And so I kind of got interested in, like why is that mountain there? What made that river? Things like that. So I studied earth and environmental science at university, and that was here in Lancaster. But I spent a year in Iceland, which is where I met Cassell. And that was like a really great year of just colouring in, the typical joke of geography is a colouring in topic, which is why I loved it. I was colouring in glaciers, mountains, learning about why they're there, and also getting out and about still. When I came back from that year, I kind of had like a year gap in my degree, and I went to EDF Energy, which is a big nuclear power station in the UK, near to Lancaster, and we've got about, I think, 12. And obviously EDF are a French company, so they kind of power a lot of France. So 20% of the UK's electricity comes from nuclear. And it's like it is technically a brilliant replacement for things like coal that we use at the moment for the baseload energy. So like, we're seeing a lot more renewables come in, which is great. But they're very hard to kind of have like a consistent, we can just keep burning coal consistently, and we get to control that, whereas obviously solar and wind, we don't. But then obviously there are huge issues of nuclear, of the waste that it produces, and that's kind of like an even longer term problem. So it certainly has its issues, as with everything. But I think a lot of people kind of opt for it because it's technically is a clean energy. But that was really interesting for me because it was like a big company, for a bit of experience on that. And it was more like of an engineering sort of turn, which I've always been quite a practical person. So getting more like hands-on with stainless steel and spanners and all that sort of stuff, that was really cool. And then, so it wasn't until like my last year of university that I wondered about kind of what do I do in this year? Do I study more kind of like the rocks and the geology stuff and kind of really understand that and become a bit more expert, or do I try something new, like more kind of like human, non-colouring in geography? And that's what I ended up choosing. I always kind of like to be a jack of all trades and do lots of things at the same time. So yeah, my last year of university, I learned more about kind of like economics and politics, which I've always stayed very clear from because I find it really boring and I'm not interested, and I just want to go run up a hill or turn a spanner. So yeah, I kind of started learning that in my final year, and I guess you could say some like action I was doing was a community fridge where we were saving food waste from places on the campus. So places that would like cook food or sell food, they would have surplus at the end of the day that they throw in the bin. So we like got together a team of volunteers and we started rescuing that, putting it in a fridge, which anyone can take from, and just managing that system. And like community fridges, I think are pretty known around the world of that sort of thing. It's like food is there for free and people can exchange it. And so that was really good, and that was like a practical action that I could see. And then, yeah, at the end of my last year of university, I started campaigning to become a local councillor for the local council, which is something I never envisaged doing. But after this kind of year about learning how like economics and politics is the way the world seems to be run, I was like, right, the world needs to change. I'm going to go into this politics stuff then and change it. Unfortunately or fortunately, I didn't get voted in. Other people beat me, but it was like really interesting to kind of be thrown into something that I'd never really been into before. And then I kind of stayed a bit doing a few things with that political party locally. But on that note, I went through like an interesting kind of thought process within like the next year after that of doing things that you feel are right and they should be done, but aren't necessarily good for you. So I picked up like another job with the party that was around like election campaigning, but kind of for someone else. And it was all about like paperwork and form filling and talking to people, like chasing people up, which for me, who likes to go run up in mountains and, turn spanners, that like wasn't for me. So although I felt like I was doing something that I should be doing, it wasn't something that I wanted to do. And it really, I really struggled with it really. Like it got me down and it just wasn't helpful. And I think that's really important is that, hopefully we all want to make some sort of change for the right reasons, and there are loads of ways to do that. And I think finding a way that works for you is important. I know, like with Extinction Rebellion as well, there's kind of some awareness of like burnout and doing like actions for too long or taking time to just recover. And I think, yeah, it's important that you get involved or do stuff for your own good, rather than doing something that, yeah, it's really good, but is it good for you? In which case, it's not very good because it's not going to last a long time, or it's not going to be enjoyable. Yeah. So then, kind of coming off that, so now a lot of my time is spent doing something called Precious Plastic Lancaster, where we are like a very small scale recycling company, where we take plastic, we shred it up, and then we melt it and reform it. There's a really good video to explain this. If I send you the link to YouTube, would you be able to play it? Yeah?
Have you guys
Cool.
heard about precious plastic? No?
I didn't hear.
Precious plastic. No? Okay, send me the link. Okay.
You see the link on the chat?
I got it. Got it.
We are Precious Plastic and we don't like waste. So we made an entire plastic recycling workspace inside an old shipping container. It contains all the tools and machines to turn plastic waste into valuable things. Plastic is collected, shredded and turned into something new, all inside the space. This workspace can turn plastic trash into, let's say, beautiful bowls in any color, or strong wall grips. And with precise molds, it can make precise objects. Or simply make any wall more beautiful. Make beams and construct a big tower, or start small with a jewelry collection. This workspace can be set up all over the world, from cities to tropical beaches to the middle of a landfill. Plastic trash goes in, valuable items out.
Alright, you can stop
We
there.
share step-by-step instruction videos and
Okay.
Yeah, so that gives you a quick kind of flavour of what precious plastic is about. And like I said, it is kind of shredding plastic up, and you melt it and reform it into new products, because plastic is something that you can do that to, as we do with metal. You know, we just melt that down and turn it back into more materials. So yeah, this is what I've got onto more recently, and as you might have gauged, like, it's got this great kind of balance for me of the practical part of practical side of things, where you're, you know, hand injection molding products and getting hands-on with all these machines, but also making kind of like that physical, like, environmental difference. And it's a very visible thing. Obviously, like this, again, kind of ocean plastic, there's this huge wave of people, you know, be like, oh my gosh, ocean plastic, it's the worst thing in the world, because it's so visual. But obviously, like, climate change is the bigger problem. And again, I think about this sometimes, you know, working on plastic, you know, I think there are bigger issues, but for me, this is something that I'm passionate about, interested in, and I'm going to continue to work on. Yeah, and so some of the products. Can you still see my video as well as my presentation?
What's that?
Can you still see me as well as the slide?
Give me 1 second. Yes, we can. Do you want me to?
Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so you can see that's a comb.
Yep.
So these are some of the things that we've made, and some of the unique things about, like, what we make are the colors. So, like, compared to normal, like, industrial recycling, for example, we can choose to put like 3 grams of orange, 1 gram of black, and 3 grams of red, and 20 grams of pink. We get to control everything, which makes it super unique and a lot more valuable, which is ultimately what our mission is to make plastic more valuable, so people just don't throw it away. This is a no-touch tool that we made for, like, opening doors, so you're not touching it with your hand, or pushing buttons, so maybe like keypads, elevator buttons, or traffic lights, things like that. And then the newest product we've made is a little plant pot, which are pretty neat. So we're excited to kind of develop these. Yeah, and a few other things. I've got involved with the council, declaring a climate emergency locally. So a few of us got together and just went out with petitions, because if you get a number of signatures, then that will go into council, and, like, has to be discussed as a point at their meetings. So a lot of us got together and did things like that. So we got the council to declare a climate emergency, but there was a lot of movement around that at the time, with Extinction Rebellion as well. And so that was really good, and the council's doing a lot. Although it's somewhat depressing when you find out that the council for, like, the kind of like Lancaster district is only accounting for 0.4% of emissions or something, which is crazy when you think about just the scale of things. Is that's what they control, whereas maybe, like, the rest of the emissions are coming from, you know, maybe food that is eaten across the district or the cars traveling around. So it's pretty crazy. And then the other thing, talking about food, that I've started doing as well. So there's groups kind of around the UK that are sustainable food cities, and there's kind of like you get different levels of like bronze, silver, and gold, based on a number of criteria. So kind of like maybe how local your food is, how resilient it is, kind of subject to like climatic things or supply shocks, things like that. So something I've set up is a gleaning network where we go rescue surplus food. So if there's a farm that's had like a supermarket contract and the supermarket cancels the order at last minute, or maybe the cabbages are too small or too big, or there's like some marks on some of the leaves and they get rejected because they don't meet the standard. We can go onto those farms, we take the food, and then we redistribute it locally, generally to people in need, or we use it for events. So we had a digital disco soup a few weeks ago where we were kind of all on videos with like a food playlist, dancing whilst cooking food, which was really good fun. So that's something else doing. So for me, yeah, my passions are essentially waste and trying to sort those out. And I've kind of taken it upon myself to, I guess, establish things that saves those and push that agenda. And I'd recommend for anyone to like follow their passions and think about what needs to change, or what movements can you support, whether it's things like Extinction Rebellion, and like how best can you do it for them and for yourself. Any questions?
Yeah.
Which party, either the Tory or the Whigs, are more eco-friendly in terms of what they wish to impose?
Did you hear anything, Martin?
No.
Can you come closer, please?
Between the Whigs and the Tories, which party is more eco-friendly and wishes to impose more policies for sustainability in the future?
The Tories are definitely not eco-friendly. They're all for profit, so Greens.
Any questions over here? Yeah.
Like, for example, you're promoting this container that recycles a lot of things. For example, if we imagine in real life, it's a dump that has like a lot of plastic bags, and in between there's a lot of trash. So it has a lot of dirt, like sand, and how do you sort it so you get to the pure plastic? And if so, can you recycle like every plastic thing?
Repeat the last bit again, sorry.
If you can recycle all the types of plastic there, no?
Oh yeah, good question. So a lot of plastic I guess different plastic has different difficulties with it. So we recycle like 3 types primarily, and there are like kind of 7 types that you'll find in like around your house, and they have what's called resin identification codes. I doubt you'll be able to see it on the camera. It's probably small and blurry. But like they're little triangles with a number in, and they have letters underneath them. So they make it really easy to identify plastics. So like I know I can take number 4. I know I can take number 5. But sometimes you come across plastics that don't have these on them, and you have to kind of know what they are from either the seller or like the original manufacturer, or kind of some other experiment you can do, like the way it might behave. But some plastics we avoid, so things like polystyrene that we use in packaging, like we can't recycle that because it releases nasty gases, so there has to be just a controlled environment. And then there are some plastics that a lot of recyclers like won't really touch because they're so unique. And then this is one of the problems with plastic, is that there are just like thousands of different types. But I'd say mostly domestically, for what we see most of the time, there's like seven kind of categories, and we personally recycle 3 of them. And then there's another one, PET, which like typical bottles are made out of, which loads of manufacturers will recycle because it's got really high value to it. But our methods, it just doesn't work, unfortunately.
I have a question about that. Where you get your plastic from? If there is a beach cleanup, can you use the plastic that comes from there, or is it too degrading?
So we try and sort plastic, which is pre-consumer plastic. So plastic that might be being wasted by manufacturers. So, for example, when products are made, if they're injection molded, so you might have seen the guy pulling the big lever, that's injection molding, where you might have like a product, but your plastic kind of comes along to get there from where it enters. And so these are called sprues, and those sprues are just a waste product, but they're like pure plastic. So you get things like that, or there's like offcuts of plastic. So we get some plastic, these no-touch straws, for example, they're made from wheel nut indicators, which are like the high-vis kind of triangles you might see on big trucks on the wheels. So we get all of their like rejected stock that doesn't meet specification. We get some of the sprues, or they get like a customer return like 10 years later, and these things have just been sitting for 10 years, so they're not allowed to resell them. So we would get those and then turn them into different products. So because we find the issue with post-consumer material, so if you've used your yogurt or your peanut butter and that comes in a plastic pot, it's probably, when it comes to us, you can't guarantee everyone's cleaned it out perfectly, or it's got like some piece of foil on it. And we don't have facility to clean everything and store all of that. It's really difficult. So we source our plastic from that company, the local university. When they clear out the students at the end of the year, there's loads of leftover stuff, and one of those things is coat hangers, and that plastic is kind of just clean, single color, so it's useful to segregate. Tupperware lids, so like pot lids that are unmatched from the university again. And then kind of just like other random things, people come to you and be like, I've got all of these, which are just really random, but they're boxes we can take. And we're trying to look at doing like beach cleanups, because there are like big tubs that come along there, and other items. I've just got, I received today actually some shredded fishing rope from a similar group in Scotland, which I'm interested to try out in our machines, and that shows it might be something else that we can use. And that's similar to talking about like other precious plastic groups, like Extinction Rebellion. You saw on the map with all the nodes. Like it's the same. Like any group can like set themselves up from this open source material online and just kind of orientate themselves with like the precious plastic movement.
So maybe, guys, you have some precious plastic in your country and you don't know about it. So maybe you can check that out.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Are there any questions? Any more questions?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, we'll take the last one.
For those particular objects, did he use any new plastic as well to make them, or just recycle 100%?
Okay, did you hear that?
No.
Okay, did you use, for those objects you showed us, did you use 100% recycled plastic, or are you using any percentage of new plastic in that?
Yeah, we use 100%, which again is quite unique from most industry points of view. Like a lot use kind of 30% virgin to get some of the material properties they need. But yeah, like all of these products are 100% recycled. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Martin. If you guys, if you want the name of the project, it's Precious Plastic. I'm sure you can find it super easy in the social media. So thanks, Martin, and thanks to you guys for listening.